American Timelines is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network. Find out more at queencitypodcastnetwork.com.
So now I'm obsessed with time. Come on, tell me about the time. Had it all in my hand tonight. Had the time of my life. When the words all come down like blues on Tuesdays gone.
Welcome to another episode of American Timelines.
This is a very special episode.
Yes, a very special.
Oh, you were going to say your name, weren't you?
I'm Amy. That's Joe.
Yes. This is a very special episode of Hanging with Mr. Cooper. No. No,
Hey, am I Mr. Cooper?
yeah. And please welcome, without further ado, our guest, Mr. Cooper, from TV's Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Art Star. Just kidding. He's not really from that show. This is Art Star from the Nerd School podcast. He's one of the
I wouldn't mind being from that show. I'd like some residual royalty check.
Did you like that show?
It was all right.
So,
but I don't want the check.
So some comedian in the 90s or 2000s had some bit where he was making fun of special episodes of sitcoms, and I can't remember who it was, but they told us they did an example of a very special episode of Hanging with Mr. Cooper, and he was like, "Yo, I don't want to hang with you no more." It was just the whole thing, and it was like just how ridiculous those are. And my brother Andy, who is on the Nerd School podcast, and I quote that at least once a week. So it just makes me think, anytime I think of special episode of anything. Real quick, Art, can I tell you something about a new drink I've been drinking?
Tell me, Joe. What is this new drink you drink?
It's called...
I know you like to drink, Joe. It has to be something good because you love to drink, Joe.
I do love to drink beers. I do love IPAs. I like hazy IPAs. So if you're a company that makes hazy IPAs and you want to send them to me, reach out. I will definitely
and he will give you positive feedback.
I will, because I love almost
Joe
every
loves
hazy
to
IPA.
drink.
But this is not an alcoholic beverage I want to talk to you about. It's called Magic Mind, and it's a tiny little shot. It takes me like 2 seconds to drink it. It tastes kind of like apples. It's a little green mixture, and I'm a smoothie guy. I like to make smoothies to feel healthy. But this looks like a tiny little version of my smoothie. It's like a little shot, and you do it in the morning.
You don't have to mix it.
You don't. No, it's already mixed. It comes pre-mixed. It's in a little bottle, and even the bottle is like biodegradable. It's like made of recycled materials, so they care about the environment. But it's this little thing, you got to shake it up. I usually shake it up, shoot it, and what it does is I don't need any more coffee after that. I usually have 1 cup of coffee, then I have that, and then I don't drink the rest of my normal morning coffee when I have Magic Mind. It's called Magic Mind. Yeah, they sent me a bunch of it, and I gotta say, it really helped. I have ADD. I don't know if you can tell, Art Star from the Nerd School podcast.
I can't tell.
It's unchecked completely, but this really helps me get stuff done and focus. I really have to admit that. So I drink way less caffeine, which can be bad for you. I get an energy boost. Anyway, I love this stuff. I can't believe how much less coffee I'm drinking. It's a little weird green shot. My daughter wanted it, and I said, "No, you can't have it. It's for me only." Some of the stuff that is in it are things like L-theanine, which I don't know what that is, but it helps increase focus and attention if it mixes with caffeine. So this doesn't even say stop drinking coffee. It mixes with caffeine.
So then that's a plus.
I actually have a discount code, Art, that you can actually use. Go to www.magicmind.co/ATL for American Timelines, not Atlanta.
American Timelines.
Yep. HTTPS if you want to be secure. www.magicmind.co/ATL, and my discount code is ATL20. That gives you 40% off a subscription.
40%.
You got to do a subscription.
That's a good deal. 40%.
40%.
Most companies only give you 10, maybe 20, but 40.
40% is a ridiculous amount, and you can't afford not to do that. Art, I hope you wrote it down.
I wrote it down, Joe.
www.magicmind.co/ATL and use the code ATL20 as your discount code. That said, this really is a special episode. I've been kind of teasing this for a while, that we already covered August of 1955, but we got to the end of the episode and Emmett Till was next. And I was like, I can't just
skim over that.
And a lot of times at the end of a month, I just like rattle off the last 3 things that happened because we're out of time. And I didn't want to, do that, just do that because this is such an important event in history. And I also want to talk about why it's important and what's important about it. And I found when I was trying to explain it to my kids, who both are teenagers who haven't ever heard of this case, which, tells you why we do have a serious problem in our schools, is like they don't learn about this. So
Right.
but as I was trying to explain it to them, I realized I'm not getting this all. There's a lot more to it. And then I started looking up stuff, and then I got down another rabbit hole, and I just kept looking up so many things. And to really understand it, I think we just need to talk about it. And that's why we have Art Star here, as a man with an African-American male's perspective. He's growing up, not in the Jim Crow South, because he's not that old. He's close to our age, but there's nothing that it kind of bothers me when it's, when you look up a topic like this, and the top 3 Amazon books you find are written by a white person. And so I did reach out to a few African-American authors to see if they would want to be guests, and they haven't responded yet.
They probably listened to another episode and were like,
that's it. It's hard because they probably listen to that.
I'm
It's
not
like,
gonna
I
do
don't want to be on these idiots
Yeah,
podcasts, but
I'm not gonna do
occasionally
that.
we're serious, and this will be more of a serious one because it's hard to find anything to joke about this. So all in all, this is why we're doing this and why we're taking a little bit more time with this one event.
So
Amy,
I
let's
think
put this
we
on.
should begin
Yes.
with
Okay.
when did you hear about Emmett Till? Like, was it
Probably in
at school? Or?
that definitely was in school.
Yeah.
I want to say high school,
Okay.
but I've always been like the type that I think I've said like the couple of times I've been on here, I've told you guys that like growing up I was really into like true crime or
Yeah.
whatever. But then also the first time I ever seen the image of it, like I'm kind of squeamish. I'm kind of a squeamish person.
Yeah.
So it was always hard for me to like look at it.
Yes.
But then also when I was in high school, my mind, I didn't think about things too much. Like I did a lot of reading when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But like certain things like this, I'd read about it, but I wouldn't see necessarily, I wouldn't feel the significance of it as much.
Yeah.
Because, while I was always, I had this one, when me and Joe had a little thing, I always said it, like, I've always been a kind of like a smart, kind of like booksy kind of person.
Yeah.
But it's still like one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, this happened, not really, I know what happened, but it's one of those things where I was one of those kids where it's like, I know it probably should have affected me because it's history, but it's also not something that I like
dwelt on.
Sort of held, dwelt on to. But then like when I was in college, I did things like dealing with like slavery and lynching as part of like my senior thesis. So then that's when I started to see things more about like, the Jim Crow South and we see stuff like that in like movies, but it wasn't until I actually started doing research that I was doing for myself, and not because it was, even though it was for school, but it was just research that I was doing for myself because I was making work based on this type stuff. So that's when I started to really take notice of, like Emmett Till, stuff that happened way before Emmett Till.
Yeah.
But
well,
just growing. Go ahead.
I was just say Art is from Baltimore, Maryland, and we had him on a previous episode. You might remember where we kind of talked about segregation and or desegregation at Baltimore school system. Art, did you go to a predominantly Black high school?
I did.
You did?
I did, and it's just weird. It's weird. So when I was in elementary school, it was mixed.
Okay.
Middle school and high school, it was predominantly Black.
Okay.
When I went to community college mixed, art school was just really an explosion. But
yeah. Of everything, right?
Yeah, but like even in it's one of those things where it's like even today I don't think that like history is taught differently. You know what I mean? Like I would assume like when my parents were in school, they probably learned more about this stuff. But like when I was in high school, this is something you would you would probably have heard about it, like maybe Black History Month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but other than that, it was just like,
or just a sentence.
Like this happened in history. Let's go on. You know.
Yeah.
So most Black people genuinely probably got history like this from home.
Yeah,
right?
From their family, right?
Yeah, like you're saying, I'm from Baltimore, but like my father's side of the family is from the Carolinas. So like my father's side of the family is from the South.
Okay.
So it's like growing up, like you knew about Jim Crow just because of, you know, family. But like they never really taught Jim Crow stuff too much when I was going to school.
Like maybe not. Yeah.
It was something you had to either learn on your own, or you heard, you know, the way that like Black people heard, you know, history growing up, you know, through word of mouth, or like someone like, yeah, well, you know, back in this day we couldn't do this and we couldn't do that. So
well, and you had to learn it through word of mouth because it wasn't taught in schools, because school, there was such a whitewashed version of history taught.
And a huge whitewashing thing.
Yeah.
I put a lot of thought into really a lot of this when I keep trying to think about, and in today's society, I do a lot of thinking about this with George Floyd and everything going on. Like I'm trying to understand, instead of just screaming at the racists and yelling, you know, calling that asshole other pieces of shit, which, you know, of course we think they are. I'm trying to like understand, how do we solve this? How do we do so? By trying to figure out how to really figure out racism. It's an age-old problem that of course I'm not going to fix, but I struggle with, like, what is, if I can find some shred of something that, this is what's wrong, and if I just correct them, if they understand this, then they'll stop being racist, horrible pieces of shit. But it's so ingrained. I just try to understand, like, look into, like, what are they being told? Like, how do they get this way? Is it just their parents? And did this happen to them? Like, you know, I've known different people who were racist, and certain ones that said that, I was bullied and I was whatever, or this person did that, you know, always blame it on something. So I'm just trying to understand.
Of those things. That's one of those easy things to do. Like, okay, I was bullied. It's like just like not even on a racial thing. Like, let's say when you're young and you bully someone, and it's like, like, let's say, for instance, if I was to bully someone and when I was a kid, I'm bullying this person, and this person, like, I don't know how to get back at him. I don't know how to get back at him. You know what? He's fat. Yeah. So that's what I'm gonna pick on. I'm gonna pick on the fact that he's fat. So, like, you fat motherfucker, leave me alone, kind of thing. Yeah. So you have like these kids, and it's like, they're different than me. Yeah. I'm being bullied. I'm gonna pick on the difference in them. Yeah. It's like a circle. Like, they're picking on the bully's probably picking on him because he's different, and now his difference is him picking on him. Like, okay, well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna point out his. I don't want to say it's his flaw, but I'm gonna point out what's different about him. And 9 out of 10 times, most of the time, it's a race thing. So and it's easier to sit there and say, like, you know, I don't like you because you're not Christian white male kind of thing.
Whatever. And it's the easiest thing to, first of all, just notice what's different and go to right that.
There's also, like, you know, you have the parent or the adult who sees the kid doing this, and they don't call them out on it.
Right.
So it just festers.
And
so
don't
when they
teach
get
them.
older, they're like, now it's like they still have this deep-seated, rooted hate for this person. Don't know why. Yeah. Just know, like, it just seems natural. And it just grows and it grows to the point, like, they're in their 20s and they're going around shooting people.
Yeah.
Because they look different.
Because they're black.
They think they're less than them.
Yeah. And I mean, just in the way, like, the police treated George Floyd, you know, they had hatred, just hatred in their heart for him. And, like, it's like they didn't see him as human. He's dehumanized. Yeah. They don't see him as a human. I mean, if you look back to Birth of a Nation, I know I'm all over the place here. I mean, they portray that the black man as the savage who's trying to get the white woman, and they just ingrained that in American society.
But the flip side of that is, white America shows you this, right? Yep. But then you have the other races, or Black America, is like, in defense of that, it's like they're showing the quote unquote savage going after the white woman. Then you have the black people. They're sitting there saying like, oh, back in those days, it was always like, and this kind of ties into Emmett Till.
Okay.
Right. So back in those days, black boys were always taught when you see a white woman walk by, either look down, look away, no matter how old she is.
Yeah.
Even the males, no matter how old they are, yes, sir, yes, ma'am.
Part of that culture was that the women were put on pedestals, and they were some sort of idealization of whatever it means to be woman or to be female.
They were given this whole, like, they're like queens, right? So like, usually in a hierarchy where they're queens and kings, you don't look at them. Like, you look down, so it was always kind of taught to black boys, don't look at white women.
When white women was on the streets, you had to get off of the street. That was a way of life. And all a white woman would have to say was, that nigger kind of looked at me, or sassed me. So we're talking about a way of life that in this part of the country that was enforced by law.
Like they're even to this day, there's some people, older generations, will sit there, they have issues with interracial marriages.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to a black man marrying a white woman, because of Jim Crow and Emmett Till, and we back in the day, we couldn't talk to a white woman because we literally bat an eye at them and we would get lynched.
Yeah.
So like they still have that mentality.
I think we should start the story though.
Okay. Anyway, so the Jim Crow South was, after slavery was repealed, there were different rules in the South and in the North. And then I looked into all this stuff with the Great Migration and like Juneteenth, what a lot of people still don't know what that is.
Well, now they do now, because it's
got ice cream.
It's recognized. It's recognized. So now capitalism moved in, and it's a thing.
Well, just the fact that so that in Texas they didn't know till later that slavery had repealed, and then so I looked up even further into some of that, and I stumbled upon this whole thing. I didn't know that the Choctaw Native Americans had African American slaves later than even after all the slaves, were finally freed, even after Juneteenth. And Texas wasn't the last one. Kentucky and Delaware were after Texas because the rules didn't apply for the North as much. And so that's all the shit I didn't know. And they don't teach you. And that's not what critical race theory is. Like, that's all we want people to teach, is the truth and what happened. There's no critical race theory that says all white people are bad. It's like, acknowledge that this shit is way more effective. I mean, it affected long lasting, and different things happen. Like, people have no idea this stuff happened because we don't teach it. We're not allowed to teach it anyway. So back to the thing. So that's I had no idea about, and Don Cheadle is a descendant of the Choctaw tribes slaves, by the way. I discovered that Don Cheadle from the Nerd School podcast. So here we are in 1955.
Did you say from the Nerd School podcast?
He is a friend of the show.
Okay.
As we talked about, he and I kind of tight.
Yeah.
We interacted one time. He rolled his eyes at me, called me an idiot under his breath, which he was right. So, okay, Emmett Till, his family was originally from Mississippi, and his mom, Mamie, had emigrated in the Great Migration. They had moved to Chicago, which Chicago is where a lot of people went. And so Emmett Till was born in 1941, but we're in 1955. And
his mother, who was gorgeous, by the way.
Yeah.
In old footage.
I watched some interviews of his mother. Just heartbreaking stuff with his cousins and things. So August 20th, Emmett Till arrives at a train station in Grenada, Mississippi, where he's picked up by his relatives. He's planning to stay with his Mississippi relatives on his 2-week summer vacation. Yeah,
because it was his uncle or grandpa had come up to Chicago for a funeral.
Yeah, it was Grandpa Moses.
Mose.
Yeah.
That was his uncle.
That was his uncle, but it was his. the cousin that went with him, it was his grandfather.
Oh,
I
okay.
think. So
We're holding on.
Mose Wright was his name.
Yeah.
And he ended up being real brave. I think a lot of people with the, I mean, shit, I
No,
don't know
you're
where to
getting
get
ahead
in
of
this.
you're getting
I'm
ahead
getting
of
way
yourself.
ahead of it. So,
you're getting jumping.
So Emmett Till goes down. He's going to go to Mississippi for the summer,
mhm.
work in the cotton fields with, because his cousin, they were sharecroppers, and he was going to go down and do that. So it was this little tiny rinky-dink town in Mississippi, which is way down in the inner asshole of the South of the United States.
The inner asshole.
Bible Belt.
Just
Oh, okay. Here, then what
the
they were
worst
gonna,
orifice.
and Mose Wright is who they're staying with, and he was brave. He had walked away from his abusive father at 16. He worked farms in North Mississippi. He married. He started a family, and then when he found religion, he quit drinking. He became a circuit riding preacher. He refused to work for white men who would fix the scales and shortchange him when his cotton haul was weighed. But most importantly, when he was 25 years old, he was drafted in the army in 1917, and he refused to serve on religious and moral grounds. He belonged to a church whose founder was imprisoned for speaking against military service. And he couldn't understand why he should help make a foreign continent safe for democracy when he believed his own wasn't safe,
Right.
at least for Black people.
Right.
So he was arrested. He spent 30 days in jail over that. So this is who Mose is. And I think it's important to kind of talk about him a little bit, because I think he gets a bad rap for part of what happens later. So that's why I want to talk about that.
And so later, I guess that kind of ties all into the whole interaction between Black and white.
Yeah.
That, allowed for him to happen. And so while it was a bad rap, it was just something that was probably ingrained to him from a kid,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Everything he does is just as you said, what you're taught and what you're ingrained, what you can or can't do.
So anyway, they go down there in the summer.
In the 75 years before Emmett Till set foot in Mississippi, more than 500 Black people had been lynched in the state. Most were men who had been accused of associating with white women.
And I don't remember how long they were there when this happened.
So it didn't.
It wasn't too long. It wasn't too long.
August 20th, the 21st is when they traveled. Wednesday, August 24th, Till entered Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market in Money, Mississippi. This is according to the FBI timeline.
So they had been working in the cotton fields, and they were ready to kick off.
And that was the thing. He wanted to go down and work. Because he wanted to be with his cousins, and he couldn't wait. It's actually his cousin kind of talked his mom, maybe didn't want to let him go.
Right.
And his cousin talked him into going, because we're going to have so much fun. Yeah. We're going to go see movies and hang out. Yeah, we got to work during the day, but we're going to, it's hanging out with your cousins.
So they go to this little tiny town called Money, and it's got this little grocery store
called Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market, run by the Carolyn Bryant Dunham and her husband.
And these are like huge rednecks.
Yes.
That run this place. And it's one of the only things on the street. It's one of the only things in the town.
There's not much else. There's nowhere else to really go. Yeah. They were known for, according to their records, they sold to mostly Black people. And they would give credit to Black people, poor Black people. There was some animosity I read in something we'll get to in a little bit, because they felt like some of the new laws with welfare and things, the owners of the store had said they were upset because the government's giving Black people free what we used to sell to them. And so we're on a hard time blaming that on Black people for having a hard time with their store. But they didn't have money, but they owned it. He owned it with his couple brothers, and he would go work. The Roy Bryant, the owner, would go work. He served the military. He'd go work for a couple of days in Texas and be out of town. And so they wouldn't trust Carolyn, his wife, who also owned the store with him, to be there alone. Like, she'd have to go stay with her brothers when they're out of town. That's kind of how protective they were of young white women at that time. But it was kind of weird. So they enter the grocery and meat market in Money, Mississippi. Carolyn Bryant Dunham, who she's now known as Carolyn Bryant Dunham, she'd been remarried, but she alleged that Till accosted her and exited the store, and Bryant followed Till out so she could retrieve a pistol from her car. And upon Bryant Dunham's exit, Till whistled at her. Apparently, wolf whistled.
So there's different accounts
Yes.
of what happened. And like she said that he grabbed her hand at one point, that he grabbed her waist at one
cornered
point,
her.
and he was telling her that he's been with white women before, don't be scared,
And
and
then
all
he
this
was
stuff.
bragging. Yeah.
But that is probably not true. And
She later in like in an interview, and we'll get to that in 2007, kind of recanted that, if that's
that part
true
of
or
it.
not. Emmett was supposedly bragging to all these kids outside. There was like 7 or 8 black kids outside the store. And he was bragging about being with white girls in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I watched
He had a white girlfriend. He had a white
had a white girlfriend. And I actually saw an interview with that girl that somebody found her in an interview, and she was devastated that the whole thing happened. And she said, yeah, he probably was referring to me. I don't know if I was his girlfriend, but I liked him. He was cute. All of a sudden, she's an old woman talking about this now, but she got choked up so many times trying to, recall what happened. And it's just amazing the difference between Carolyn Bryant and a white woman in the North that doesn't have that same prejudice and hate. It's just crazy. But a lot of them didn't believe that he had been with a white woman. So he supposedly was egged on to prove that, you can get a white woman, whatever. So, we all know guys know that peer pressure to go and talk, do a little more, but this is all hearsay. Some of that, it might not be true. Regardless, none of it's cause for murder. But she said at the time, or she testified, that he cornered her, tried to put his hands on her hips, and, was basically saying, baby, you don't have to worry. I know, my way with a white woman. And then that's when his buddies came in and like, no, this is the South. You can't do this. Dragged him out, and he whistled. And while she was going to get her gun, they took off. And that was the end of what he did supposedly wrong.
According to her.
That was, again, Wednesday, August 24th in the evening. By Saturday, August 27th in the evening. So
they go home, and he tells him, don't tell that this happened. But
yeah, so he was begging
them not to tell
everybody, not to tell anybody.
His uncle.
Yeah, don't tell your uncle.
But they, word started to get around.
But they did, and you know what?
Witnesses.
And they didn't tell their uncle, and they regretted that, because if they would have told him, they could have got him out of town.
Right.
Because the uncle would have known right away.
What to do.
What to do. Yeah.
So they think a couple of days go by and nothing happens. So they're like, oh, well, maybe, and they kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden.
So in those couple of days, that's when Roy, the owner, came back from Texas, and allegedly he is told on Saturday, August 27th, 1955 in the evening, a black teenager entered Bryant's grocery and meat market in Money and was verbally confronted by Roy about being from Chicago, because he's heard at this point through the
kid from Chicago.
Yeah. And the boy said he wasn't the right person, and the confrontation ended. Sometime between Wednesday and that Saturday, a black teenager was walking north from Money, Mississippi, when J.W. Millam, Roy Bryant, J.W. Washington all came up behind him in a pickup truck. Washington, at Roy Bryant's direction, took and threw that kid in the truck and told Roy Bryant that wasn't the right person, and he was released. So there were 2 other kids, at least, that they were trying to just find and figure out who it was. And J.W. Millam is Roy's brother, his half brother.
I think it's Milam.
Milam, Milam.
Yeah,
J.W.
I think. Yeah.
He's a heavy-set, bald, white piece of
POS. Piece of shit.
Yeah. Basically,
total
blowhard asshole. Basically has in his head like he's the guy at every place he worked at. handles the black people and makes them respect people or whatever. And so he's basically a piece of shit. Racist piece asshole. You know. Sunday, August 28th, 2:30 a.m. Roy Bryant and J.W. Millen, piece of shit, came to Mose Wright's home east of Money, Mississippi, looking for the boy that did the talking in Money, Mississippi. Till was taken from the home, and someone with a lighter voice than a man's identified Till as the right person as they left.
Another man standing on the porch. My dad talked about it. There was another person in the truck, because when they marched Emmett out to the truck, and they asked the person inside the truck, is this the one? My dad said he heard a woman's voice identifying Emmett as the boy that did the whistling.
Which insinuates that she was there. And later they say that they were the only two, but that insinuates that she was there.
But they could tell a woman's voice pointed out, so it had to be Carolyn's, you know, telling them.
Yep.
About 6 a.m. on Sunday, Willie Reed observed 4 white men and 3 black men in a truck with Till in the back, entering Leslie Milam's farm. Milam, did you say it is?
Milam.
Leslie Milam's farm on the Clint Sheridan plantation outside of Drew, Mississippi. Reed then heard the sounds of someone being beaten inside a barn. So Willie Reed, I got lost in who he is. And he's
the one with the cataracts, right? In the he looked like he was dressed real stylish.
I didn't see him in it. I didn't see the same documentary you did, but
he was a kid at the time, right? And
he left. He had to leave Chicago after he testified, changed his name,
leave Mississippi.
And
go to
left Mississippi and went to Chicago. And was very hesitant to ever go back. But went back when they reopened stuff. Anyway, but that's what threw me off when he saw 4 white men and 3 black men with Emmett Till.
The other 2 black guys were people who actually worked with him.
Like they had to. They were being forced to.
I'm sure they were.
Right. Yeah. That's what I read too, is that they were being forced to.
Okay. So I did. Yeah. Sunday around 7 a.m., somewhere around that time, Willie Reed came to Mandy Bradley's home, and Bradley observed 4 white men and a truck by a barn at Leslie Milam's farm. One of the men was tall and bald. That we know who that is. Yeah. And then Sunday by 8 o'clock, Reed walked past a shed and an oat bin on Milam's farm and observed Leslie Milam and another man there. And then he later observed a fire in a barrel outside of Milam's home in Glendora, Mississippi.
Yeah, so they burned all Emmett Till's clothes in the barrel.
Burning any evidence of him.
Yeah.
Which they admitted to in their confession. Sunday, August 28th in the morning, the same people observed Otha Johnson Jr. and Levi Too Tight Collins and Milam with Milam's truck at Milam's gas station store in Glendora. Those were the 2 black guys I think that was with them. They saw that something was under a tarp in the bed of the truck and blood was dripping from the bed of the truck. When asked about the blood, Milam threatened him. And then they drove to Glendora Cotton Gin and then departed town. By 10 a.m., Levi Too Tight Collins paid 25 cents to clean blood out of the back of the truck while it was parked by Milam's gas station store in Glendora. By 2 p.m. on Sunday, LaFleur County Sheriff George Smith questioned Roy Bryant about Till's disappearance. Bryant admitted to taking Till from Mose Wright's home and bringing him to Carolyn at the store in money, and he further claimed that Till was then released and Bryant was placed under arrest. By Monday, Milam appeared at the LaFleur County Jail and talked with Deputy John Ed Cothran and admitted to taking Till from Mose Wright's home, taking him to Money, Mississippi, and then letting him go. Milam was placed under arrest. By Wednesday, August 31st, sometime in the morning, Robert Hodges discovered a body floating in the Tallahatchie River north of Philip, Mississippi. The body was later identified as being Emmett Till.
And it was the only way they could identify it was that he had his father's ring on. That was the only he was unrecognizable because he had been beaten so badly.
His face
and he was in the water.
And you can see these pictures online, and that's kind of what Art alluded to at the beginning was he's squeamish and it was hard for him to look at that. And I'm the same way. I'm very squeamish, but
It doesn't look real. Like it looks like a mask.
It looks kind of like Eric Stoltz, in the mask. Like it's just, it's beyond what the mind can comprehend what happened to that kid. His body was recovered from the Tallahatchie River and transported to the Century Burial and Funeral Home in Greenwood, Mississippi. It was later transported to Chicago for viewing, a funeral, and a burial.
His mother, when she got the body back in Chicago, it was sealed in a pine box and it was sealed shut. And she was like, why can't I open this? I paid all this money to have this body. She had to fight because they were getting ready to bury him.
Wanted to bury him. They were ordered. They were ordered by the sheriff to bury him immediately.
Yeah. And so they were like,
and she
halfway
fought.
putting him in the ground. And when they were ordered then to stop. So she
got Mayor Daley involved from Chicago
and she
to
paid
stop
all this money.
Yeah.
And then they get it and it's sealed up. And she's like, how do I know what's even in there? I need to. And there was an order that the mortician was not to open the box.
Oh, I didn't see this part.
And she said, do you have a hammer? And he said, well, yeah, I have a hammer. Why? And she said, well, there's nothing that says I can't open this box. You need to get me your hammer. So then he went and got her a hammer and she opened it and she described it. I mean, she said one of his eyeballs was hanging down and she could see
the other one was missing completely.
A bullet hole.
I saw a hole, which I presumed was a bullet hole. And I could look through that hole and see daylight on the other side. And I wondered, was it necessary to shoot him?
He had been beaten so badly. He was swollen and then had been in the water for so long too, that made it extra bad. She said she had been 3 blocks away and had smelled the worst smell she ever smelled. And then the closer she got, realized it was Emmett's body that she was smelling.
But all this goes to a lot of the reason why this is such an important and groundbreaking case. If she hadn't insisted, if she hadn't gotten Mayor Daley involved and more people, she talked to anybody she knew that could have any power at all to get them not to do that. They were going to immediately bury him.
Well, and then
it makes you wonder how many of these have happened like that.
And then they said, well,
oh yeah.
Yeah. And then they said, would you want us to clean him up? And she said, no, I want an open casket and I want the world to see what they did to him.
That's it. And that's the thing that made this different.
Yeah.
Her bravery in doing that.
And here's the thing. It's one of those, see, this is another one of those things where, like you said, it's her bravery in doing that. But now what she basically did was force people to look, to see.
Yes.
Right? These are things that some of them like they wouldn't believe, can't believe, but like she's forcing you, like, look at her son. Like, look what they did to her son over hearsay. Like this happens to Black America all the time.
I know the same thing with George Floyd.
Yeah.
It was, we were forced to see. We could not look away. And
because there was a pandemic and people had nothing else to do. People will find whatever it is they can do to not have to face the uncomfortable truths in life. And even allies and people who aren't racist, it's uncomfortable and we wish it wasn't true and we want to just ignore it and get away and turn it off.
Yeah.
When the news gets too uncomfortable and inconvenient for us, we want to turn it off and turn on a Marvel movie,
right.
We all do that. So imagine the people that have guilt and somewhere inside know that they've done wrong and have participated in this and they know it's wrong and they won't face it because it's uncomfortable. And so because she did that and it forced a conversation and it sparked all these civil rights. It sparked the civil rights movement as we know it. I mean,
inspired Rosa Parks.
It
inspired her to.
It inspired Rosa. Rosa Parks said she had Emmett Till on her mind when she didn't give up her seat. There's all kinds of people that have said they were always passive before and they never stood up and said anything before. But if I even heard interviews with them saying, if that can happen to a 14-year-old kid, what won't they do? And we have no other choice but to kind of speak up and change. So I mean, just think if it wasn't Mamie, or if it was, or if she didn't do that, and you wouldn't blame her for not doing all
Going
that.
through all
You know what I
that.
mean? Nobody would blame her, because how many of us would be tough enough to, do all that and be strong enough? I mean, she even had said she believed that happened for a reason, and Emmett was born to do this. He was born to be the sacrificial lamb, of course, in hindsight. But so that's kind of the big thing, and why Emmett Till is so important. So by September, the widespread condemnation of killing Emmett Till, both in Mississippi and across the nation. Roy Wilkins, head of the NAACP, called his killing a lynching, which it was. And Mississippi's governor, Hugh White, urges a vigorous prosecution of the case.
And see, that's the thing. Like, you had like these governors in the South, these sheriffs, people in power, they were always denouncing these things.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them at nighttime went out there and put on the white sheet.
Yeah,
right.
That's it. It's weird that they were publicly denouncing it, but who knows? Yeah, you're right. And that's in Mississippi.
There was that sheriff, was interviewed.
Tallahatchie County Sheriff H.C. Strider.
We never have any trouble until some of our southern niggas go up north and NAACP talks to them and they come back home.
And this was like a news interview. And I just am like, God, how does somebody think that way?
When I told you guys in the beginning how, I researched a lot of these things for like my senior thesis in college. So the stuff that I was reading, like the shit shocked me so much that it was, I don't want to say it was hilarious, but it had the audacity kind of thing in my head, right? Like I did this one drawing where, these always talk about how like what they would do in the South is they'd go to church on Sunday. Then they'd get on the train because they heard in the next town there was a lynching. So you have like whole families just got finished praising God on their way to watch them kill someone. Yeah. So I did this drawing where there was like, everyone had on these T-shirts that had nooses on them. Little kids had balloons. Because like they literally made picnics out of these journeys to go watch lynching.
Yeah.
Like, and they thought this was okay right after church.
It's just crazy. Like, of course we live in this hell that we live in. Like, that's what we come from. I mean, it's just insane.
All right, let's keep going.
So crowds estimated in size from 10,000 to 50,000 at the Chicago funeral home, leaving it in shambles. The burial was then postponed to September 6th to allow additional time for the public to view Till's body. Meanwhile, largely in response to the national attention the case attracted, powerful local people in Mississippi decide to use the upcoming Bryant and Milam trial to send a message to outsiders. All 5 lawyers of the town of Sumner, Mississippi, agreed to defend Bryant and Milam. Meanwhile, just to send a message, you don't mess with Mississippi, I guess. Meanwhile, Sheriff Strider states he is not convinced that body pulled from the river was really Emmett Till.
Yeah,
and
that
then
was their
rumors
big
started swirling that he had chest hair and that boy didn't have chest.
And then it was a big plot,
denial.
A big plot from the mom and the NAACP were plotting together, and they had planted this dead body, and it wasn't even a black person they had found, and just like all of these crazy.
Who does it sound like in today's?
Yeah, no kidding.
That everything is a conspiracy. It sounds like the crazy right.
Mm-hmm.
It's awful. So a Tallahatchie County grand jury indicted Roy and JW for the murder and kidnapping of Emmett Till. And conviction on either charge could carry the death penalty on September 7th, 1955. On September 19th, the trial of Roy, Bryant, and J.W. Milam for the murder of Emmett Till opens in Sumner, Mississippi. By the end of that day, an all-white, all-male jury is selected. And that's the other thing. It's just maddening. September 20th, 1955, testimony begins in the Emmett Till murder trial. More than 70 reporters and photographers crowd the small courtroom for the opening of the trial. Mose Wright and Till's mother both testified for the prosecution.
And it was segregated, and the black journalists had to sit in the segregated sections and it was much further away from the jury. Like, it was just like everything, they try, in every barrier they can put, they try to put.
Yeah. September 21st, the state presents 3 surprise witnesses, all African Americans who testify they saw Milam and others around a barn or heard whipping and hollering from inside the barn on the morning of the day Till was believed murdered. And like, that's another thing is you don't know how rare this was.
Yes.
That an African American would be brave enough
to testify in a murder trial.
To testify in the South, because they know they got to leave. Their life is over as they know it. So just the bravery there that so many of us wouldn't have the balls to do.
Well, I guess this ties into your whole Uncle Moses redemption part, right?
Yeah.
When he was in the courtroom, when he actually identified them, where that.
That's the big. Right. Yeah. That's the big moment.
He actually pointed them out. It was like, I guess in that moment, it's one of those things. Like I say, it was ingrained in him when he was young. So at the moment when he let them take Emmett, it was one of those things where it's like, you let Master do what Master gonna do. They're gonna rough him up. He's gonna come home, kind of thing. That could have been going through his mind at the time. Like, okay, he'll be back. They just want to rough him up a little bit. This will be a learning lesson for him because he's from up north. He doesn't know any better, kind of thing.
Well, Well, and even some of the different accounts of this story, when you look it up, even just the way they portrayed him pointing out who did it, is retold in a racist way. They said them over thar, and they spelled wrong. And his family said he didn't say it like that. He never spoke like that. It's just like, even that, depicting that moment, they can't do it honestly.
Well, usually when it comes to race, there's always, the offending partner, the offending party trying to create their own narrative to fit what they feel will make them look good.
That's
or
just
will help
it.
defend their cause.
Yep.
That's just it. Yeah. September 22nd, 1955, the state rests in the murder trial. The defense begins presenting its witnesses. Carolyn Bryant testifies outside the presence of the jury for some reason. Sheriff Strider testifies that he thought the body pulled out of the river had been there from 10 to 15 days, far too long to be that of Till. An embalmer testifies that the body was bloated beyond recognition, so sowing doubt. By September 23rd, 1955, after the defense presents a series of character witnesses, closing arguments are presented in the Bryant-Milam trial, and after about an hour of deliberating, the jury returns a not guilty verdict. From September to October 1955, hundreds of thousands of people, mostly in northern cities, attend rallies protesting the verdict in the Till murder trial. In Mississippi, however, membership in segregation-supporting white citizens' councils skyrockets. November 9th, 1955, a LaFleur County grand jury refuses to indict Bryant and Milam on kidnapping charges, and the two are released from custody. So not even kidnapping do they get convicted of.
Right.
Because Emmett was less than. Like, they're not gonna, they wouldn't have charged him with kidnapping even
in the Jim Crow South. It doesn't count. He was justified
because they said minds. That the smallest sentence you could get for kidnapping was like 10 years, and in their minds they couldn't see putting them away for 10 years just for kidnapping a black boy is what they said.
Is what they're, oh God. So January 4th, 1956, Look magazine published a story about the Till case, which includes excerpts from an interview conducted by Bradford Huey and he interviewed Bryant and Milam. The two men, now protected by the double jeopardy clause, admitted to killing Emmett Till and throwing his body in the Tallahatchie River. And this was the thing I had to look up because, I mean, as you know, throughout this podcast, I despised our court system and the law system, being that it's clearly set up for rich people.
Yeah.
And, rich people can just bail out and just afford the best lawyers and get off
Well,
scot-free.
they don't even get pulled over.
Yeah, there's never any.
I mean, it doesn't.
So I already like think it's ridiculous, but I don't, I've heard of double jeopardy, but I've never really paid that much attention. Then I looked it up and just like double jeopardy is fucking ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
No, but you have to have it. You can't.
You got to have some form of it.
Yeah.
But that these guys can go ahead and just admit it in an article and say we did this now, and there's nothing you can do about it because double jeopardy is a thing.
Yeah.
And
then you wonder just how, like, not to say that they were dumb, but the fact that they knew this, that they can get away with, this is like, there's that other, like, who coached them, who was coaching them. It's like, hey, well, you got off, you can say whatever you want now because they can't try you again.
Somebody had to tell them and explain that to them because these guys aren't the brightest.
No.
But I've looked up the other countries that have the double jeopardy, and that there are other countries have come up with other stipulations and things that have changed. I had a whole little piece of paper about the double jeopardy law and all what countries it has that, but I was like, I lost wherever that is. But it's just like, it's just frustrating how it's just always unfair. We didn't talk about Jet magazine. That was part of where Emmett's mom, Emmett liked to be called Bobo, but his mom posted the pictures of him in Jet magazine, and that's kind of how it got so much coverage because they published it. So that was a important thing. Not since I'm talking about Look magazine. Anyway, so I didn't realize at one point I was reading this article from Look magazine where it was their confession. I didn't realize that's what I was reading, and so that account of it really, I mean, although they admit to doing it, they're still awful. It really like kind of paints a backstory of how, what a great guy what hard workers these guys were, and how Emmett was real, smug, and he wouldn't admit he was wrong.
So did you read anything about his father?
About Emmett's father?
Emmett's father or Roy's father?
Emmett.
No.
So his father was killed. What you say he was born in 41, 2 years after he was born, right?
Oh, that's right. He was
father,
2.
Yeah, his father was overseas. His father got executed in the army because they supposedly he had raped 2 white women.
Yep.
So it was like after this trial, they just like America does, not even America, the world does now. It's like, okay, this person did something. Let's try to discredit him, to point him as a bad person. Let's dig into their history and bring up all this other stuff. It doesn't even matter what's going on. But like after this, they just started posting stuff about his father. Like, oh, I guess it's genetic kind of thing. Like his father did. His father, like his mother didn't even know. She didn't even know what had happened to his dad.
Kind of what
she didn't know.
Same
they
thing.
Actually went to find. The lawyers went to find out what happened to his father and how he got. What had, like, I guess he got dishonorably discharged. It was like some sort of court martial he had, but like they figured out how and why it happened, and it's like because supposedly, he raped these 2 white women in Italy. But it's like one of those things where it's like here's a black man, here's a white woman.
And that would have been 1940, like 3 or something around that time.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like you don't know what happened. It could have been like they could, it could have been like they were all lovers or something. But it just so happened. It's like, oh, this black guy with this, he's raping her. No trial, just string him up.
They just try to bring out all this stuff just to discredit and say that, same thing they still do with George Floyd. All you heard about, oh, what a criminal he was, and he wasn't a great guy, and look who you're defending. Oh, you're naming this after somebody who was such a terrible person. And even the one, like, who was the one a few years before George Floyd that was just selling cigarettes? You start forgetting their names. There's so many. Eric Gardner. And then everybody say, oh, you know who you're talking about, you know what he did, and they just try to dehumanize him to just distract.
And some of them, the same ones, have very bad backgrounds themselves. The narrative, it doesn't fit their narrative. It's like I'm not the one on trial; they are.
That's
right. Right. So when they published this article in Look magazine. It was kind of billed as the only time you'll ever hear what really happened and the truth. And they do tell it, but it's a different telling. And there's a lot of the stuff is missing. The whole barn where they beat him is missing.
Yeah.
And they say he was like being smug and tough and he wouldn't apologize. And that's when they got frustrated, which
they
I don't
said
think
that
is true.
they said that he was telling them that he had white girlfriends. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then he kept saying, "Oh, no, admit you're not better. You're not better than me."
That's
and he
right.
said, "No,
I'm just as good as you."
Yeah, or something like that.
And
Like,
that's why they had to kill him.
and his family was saying he was crying when he left. He wouldn't have done something like that. So it's frustrating. 1957, there was an unsuccessful attempt to assassinate Sheriff Strider, who has come to be viewed by many African Americans as the biggest villain in the Till case, in part due to publicity about the Till case. Congress passes the first Civil Rights Act since Reconstruction. Dogs are fighting.
They're playing,
knocking everything over. They're wrestling. Okay, 1962, Bob Dylan recorded a song called "The Death of Emmett Till." 1980, John Milam dies of cancer at age 61.
Hughes also wrote a poem.
Oh, he did?
Mississippi, 1955, it was called, and it was about Emmett Till.
It's not on this timeline, so it didn't happen. Roy Bryant died in 1994 of cancer at age 63. I did read up about both of them, and that I think they both pretty much died miserable and poor and on, down on their luck. So at least they didn't, but that's not anything. They should have, but there's no sentence. And then I don't know, it starts to get into religion. And I think that's a lot of why people didn't retaliate is there's a lot of people that believe, what's the scripture thing that says, I will,
turn the other cheek or something?
No, where God will get the punishment, will do the punishment. I can't remember. They kept quoting it and thinking, of course, I already I'm terrible at religion. And so basically they just believe it's not up to us for vengeance. God will get the vengeance. And just really believing in religion really got a lot of these folks through it. And I don't know how. I don't.
Well, it's faith. It's believing.
Yeah, faith and believing in the higher power and believing that, like you said, like they know that in the afterlife, these guys will get what's coming to them, kind of thing.
Yeah, they'll get what theirs. And I think that's sometimes, sadly, all you.
That's why a lot of people don't necessarily. It's like that's why you have that whole thing. Like, do you believe in death penalty or don't you believe in the death penalty?
Yeah.
Because it's like if you killed them, they don't really suffer. Whereas if you let them rot in jail for the rest of their life, they suffer. So it's crazy.
And turn the other cheek. And but you can see why, if you didn't believe in religion or that there will be some punishment somewhere, how could you live in this world? How could you live in this awful world unless you believe it's for something? Otherwise, this is hell, like, oh my gosh. 2004, the Justice Department announced it's reopening the Till case to determine if anyone other than Bryant and Milam was involved, and if so, whether they should be prosecuted under federal law. And so a lot of people wanted Carolyn Bryant to be charged for lying, especially if she admitted later apparently that she was lying.
But it wasn't on the tape. That it was an interview.
Yeah,
but they didn't have get that part on the tape.
They didn't have that recorded. And again, with this double jeopardy, you can reopen a double jeopardy if you can prove
you've got
new evidence, I guess. And that's kind of what they try to do. Stop barking. In 2005, Emmett Till's body was exhumed and autopsied to again identify him, because people were still at that time, by 2005, still saying it wasn't him.
Probably the birthers.
Yeah, that's it. And then February 2007, a LaFleur County jury composed mostly of African Americans finds no credible evidence to support the claim of a documentary film producer that up to 14 people were involved in the Till kidnapping and murder.
Wow, 14 people.
That's what they thought. And so they couldn't find any evidence. And can you imagine trying to find evidence in 2007 from something that happened in 1955?
Well, see, the thing with that is, like, now we have things that we can do with DNA that we couldn't do back in those days.
Right.
So, you know, it was probably still hard, but it's not as hard as it would have been like if you tried to find it 5 years after the fact, as opposed to like, you know, we're in the 21st century now.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But DNA now can do so much. So
yeah.
But what can you prove? So in 2017, author Timothy Tyson released details of a 2008 interview he did with Carolyn Bryant. He claimed that during the interview, she had disclosed that she had fabricated parts of her testimony at the trial. And Tyson said that during the interview, she retracted her testimony that Till had grabbed her around the waist and uttered obscenities, saying that part's not true. The jury didn't hear Bryant's testimony at the trial, as the judge had ruled it inadmissible, but the court spectators did hear it. The defense wanted Bryant's testimony as evidence for a possible appeal in case of a conviction. In the 2008 interview, the 72-year-old Bryant said she could not remember the rest of the events that occurred between her and Till in the grocery store. She also said, quote, nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him, unquote. Tyson said that Roy Bryant had been abusive towards Carolyn, and it was clear she was frightened of her husband, and Tyson believed Carolyn embellished her testimony under coercive circumstances. And Bryant described Milam as domineering and brutal and not a kind man. So there's something about this interview was sealed, and he really felt like Carolyn Bryant kind of treated the interview as like a confessional, like she was trying to get it off her chest. You could tell she felt guilty. But apparently it's the details of the interview are sealed until 3036 for some reason. It's in the FBI has it, whatever it is, it's sealed for some reason. So 3030 or not 3036. Did I say 3036? Yeah, 2036.
I was gonna say.
So yeah, 3036 we'll all be aliens on another planet. But by 2036 is right around the corner. So stay tuned. We'll do another episode in 2036. Yeah.
They've unsealed them.
Yeah. But I think I have like 8 more tabs open that I could go into other stuff, but
it's been an hour.
I think that's the gist of it. I mean,
yes,
you could really fall down a lot of rabbit holes on this, but again, the biggest thing is without Mamie doing this, it wouldn't have sparked
the civil rights
the civil rights movement as we know it.
I mean, it
but
probably
then also
would have, but it
something would have
slower. It wouldn't have been as quick.
But yeah.
But then also finally this year, Biden just signed in.
That's it.
The Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act.
Yes.
So,
just this year.
Which just this year, it's now illegal to lynch.
Actually, a couple of months ago. Yep.
Yeah, it was just that was the other thing. I had that somewhere.
It says the act amends the Matthew Shepard and James Berry Jr. Hate Crime Prevention Act and prior hate crime laws to define lynching as an conspired, bias-motivated offense, which results in death or serious bodily injury.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's crazy that something like this just gets passed in 2022.
I know.
Right? And it's like, I remember, so going back when I was doing research, like most of my research was basically around lynching, right?
Yeah.
And I want to say, I used to know the numbers by heart, but like between like 1862 and like I want to say 50 something, there have been over 4,500 African Americans lynched. You know, and it was
insane.
Crazy, and this is what they knew of.
Just of what you know of.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Oh my God, it's just crazy. Yeah, it's crazy that this is, and there's probably people that think this is a waste of time. You know, they're like, why are they passing that? That doesn't happen anymore because people want to believe what they want to believe. It's crazy.
But bullshit. It doesn't happen anymore.
I know.
All right, it's time to get out of here, Chuck Berry.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening to this very special episode. Emmett Till is important to really, really talk about and not gloss over. And nobody's trying to indoctrinate anybody. We just want to talk about the truth and what has really happened. And if we all just take a second and listen and realize what our history is, you could learn from it. and it's important.
It's right.
You got anything important? Any high horse things to say, Aim?
High horse things.
Yeah, like me. That was my speech. Art Star, what about you? You got any last messages for American Timelines listeners?
I believe in equality. We all should believe in equality.
Yes.
Equality should be ingrained in everyone's head.
That's right. And I guess I just get discouraged because history just always goddamn repeats itself. And it's just every time I look at history, I can see these clear parallels to things that are happening today.
Yeah.
And it just boggles my mind.
How many parallels did we already make to something that just happened with George Floyd?
I know. I mean, it's just sad. It's like, some things just take forever to change. I know they're going to change because you can't stop progress. You can only slow it down. And I know.
Are you sure that's true?
Yes.
I keep telling myself that.
You can't stop. Once the momentum is there for progress, you can't stop it.
So marijuana will be legal?
Yes. I think marijuana will be federally legal.
Blaze it up.
Woo!
Let's blaze it up, Art Star.
420.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right.
And
thanks, Art.
Yeah, thanks, Art.
No problem. Glad
to be here.
I was here.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all.
I feel special. I feel special to be on America. Be on the I don't want to call it the home show. It's like I'm in the show, like the major leagues.
The mama show.
It's the show that started the History for Jerks. Kind of. Right. Yep. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
And it's time to get out of here, Chuck Berry. That's the end of this episode. Rate, review, subscribe, listen to Nerd School, starring Art Star, and check out the Gruff and Loud Show on YouTube. This episode included audio clips from the following YouTube channels: Mamie, Till Mobley, 60 Minutes, and American Experience. Matt Truman Ego Trip is the greatest band of all time. Buy their music.